You are about to dig into a fresh, spiced carrot muffin. It's one of my favorites. It has a streusel topping. It has dates inside of it, shredded carrot. It has molasses for that deep, rich color, but it's perfect for a transitional baking time into fall as we're getting some spices, some warmer tones, and some really good muffins. So this is something I'm gonna wanna eat on, and I think you are too, so let's make it. We're getting into one of the best times of the year where we start being inside and baking more. I love baking season. While you can bake anytime, when it starts getting cooler outside, it's more fun to bake. So these spiced carrot muffins are one of my favorite ways to enjoy a new season because they have all the elements of some warming spices, but also have carrot in them. So just like a carrot cake that offers the moisture, it offers the flavor. And these really are a light, let's say like a light variation of a carrot cake in muffin form that can be eaten for breakfast. They can be a great snack. They can really almost be a dessert, because let's be honest, muffins are usually just a version of a cake. I'm gonna say it, but they make us feel good having them for breakfast because somehow they're healthier, right? Let's just go with it. So to start, we're gonna go with our dry ingredients, which is pretty simple. The reason I like muffins is because you can portion them perfectly and you can just have them to give away easily, take somewhere. I feel like we just don't make muffins enough. It's the thing we go out for, but why not make them? And it's gonna start with flour. Instead of sifting my flour, I always just lighten it and then put it and overfill whatever measuring cup I'm using and swipe it off. That way you don't get too much in there. And then what we're gonna do is put in some brown sugar. Now, we're using 2 forms of sugar and we're gonna really up the flavor with it. So we're gonna use a small amount of brown sugar. That's gonna give us the right texture that we need, the right crumb we need, lightly packed right there. But then later on, we'll use a little bit of molasses or sorghum, which is one of my favorites. You can interchange them. So to this, we're gonna add both some baking powder and some baking soda. Now, they both do different things. They actually help lift it, obviously. They give it some nice lifting capability, but then they also brown it, and they each do those things separately, and we want them to work together to do that. We're gonna also put in some salt that seasons it, make sure that all the flavors come out, and then to really amp up this time of year, but also the carrot cake idea, some ground cinnamon and some ground ginger are gonna go right in, right before we mix them. And we're mixing the dry ingredients together just because it makes sure everything evenly incorporates. Now notice I'm doing this in a bowl. I'm not using an electric mixer. You can if you want, but sometimes certain things are just best to make easy, and this is easy. One bowl wonder. Let's call it a one bowl wonder. I think that's a good one, and a muffin should be. So the dry ingredients are ready to go, and now we can start talking about the more wet ingredients, but also the carrot we're gonna be adding. Now I'm using a box grater and I'm just shredding some carrot along the bigger holes on the grater. And this is just making sure I get the right size. And notice, if I'm using an organic carrot that especially if I grew it at home, or if not, I scrub it well, I don't peel it. Because if it's scrubbed well and it's a good carrot, I don't have to worry it. So I'm gonna finish up how much I need and put all the wet ingredients right in. I measured the carrot out and I'm gonna put it right in. We can take out that whisk. So this is now just putting in all these components that we're just gonna really fold in once they're all added. And I'm gonna put in some now molasses. This is one of my favorite things to use, not only in the fall. Now, I live in Iowa, and for some reason, we sometimes can easily get sorghum, which is not molasses. Molasses is a byproduct of sugarcane. Sorghum is sorghum. So instead of sugarcane, it's sorghum, but it has the same flavor components. It has a little bit, not quite the bitter depth that molasses can. I really like it, but use molasses or sorghum, whatever you can get your hands on. And then with this, we're gonna take a couple eggs and we're gonna beat them. And the reason we're beating them is to make sure they're incorporated well, but also that they're evenly being incorporated, because sometimes if you just throw the egg in and then try to whisk it, it doesn't mix in as easily, does it? No. So you wanna just sit here, quickly whisk it just a little bit. They don't have to be perfect, but we're just making sure that we can beat them up so they'll evenly incorporate. This makes the white and the yolk much easier. So we can put those right in. And then there's 2 more components that to me make this perfect for the time of year, perfectly seasonable. Now the first one is gonna be dates. I love dates. So carrot cake usually has raisins. You could do raisins, but I have this thing where I love dates. And the thing is, sometimes you can buy them pitted, sometimes you don't, but you just slice them open. If not, you get that pit out. And then I give them a couple of slices. They can be sticky. And one way to get around that, you can put them in the freezer if you want to. And you can then chop them a little bit easier, but they're not too bad here. You just chop them in smaller pieces, small pieces, but then they're gonna go in and they just have that sweetness to them, but they taste more caramelly than a raisin does. I think they're much more interesting too. So I'm putting those in. And then I have some walnuts that I did pre-toast. It's important. Notice I'm keeping a few of the small pieces in the pan. We're gonna use them in 2 ways here. But what we're gonna do is just give them a rough chop. Once you toast them, they chop super easy. But toasting them first, they're not gonna toast once they're in the baked good. They're gonna be soggy. So if you pre-toast them, you're gonna make sure they have the flavor they should, which is what you want, but then also everything else. So I'm gonna put this in here, and then to round out the wet ingredient side, we have a little bit of melted butter. And that's gonna give them the flavor, gonna give them that right texture. Believe me, the butter is key here. And to mix, I really just wanna fold everything together. That can take just a couple minutes here, and you do wanna, while you're doing it, break up those dates just slightly to make sure they're not clumping, because that stickiness can. And the reason we're folding is you don't wanna over mix at this point. It'll be a nice thick batter, but it's gonna be so moist and have so much flavor, and that darker color is coming from that molasses that we're adding. So if there's a few dry bits, that's completely fine. I don't wanna over mix, but now we can just portion it out. I'm portioning out all of these muffins now. A scoop helps. You don't have to do it. Don't worry if you feel like, well, I don't have that size scoop. You can do it by eye or just keep going until it's all used up in them. But this is just the perfect amount, so I like to even scrape out, make sure I get everything I need in here, because this is what's gonna make sure each of them are filled equally. Put it in there and put it right in. See how the scoop makes it so easy. And I know you're thinking, oh, it's a dark batter. It is, but think of all those rich flavors we're gonna have. So for a quick topping, because I think anything needs a topping, life is a party, finish it off. We have some flour, some brown sugar, and a few more of those chopped and toasted walnuts. I'm just mixing that up. A little pinch of salt is in here too, just to make sure that you get the seasoning, just a pinch. And then once I have that mixed, I'm just adding a little bit more melted butter. So this is making a really quick, a really easy streusel topping. So what we're doing this, see how the butter just starts clumping together? It's exactly what we want. And as we do this, we're then getting these weird, interesting nodules. That's exactly what we want. This fun little perfect topping. So now what I do is I just take little pieces of this and I just put it over. You can kind of just set it around and then it will just bake into it. I'm just portioning it out evenly, just finishing up. Just eyeball it. I mean, you can measure it out, but life is short. So once it's all in there, I'm gonna clean up the edges because you don't want any burnt pieces. How could we handle burnt pieces? We don't want that. So just clean it up. We're gonna put these into the oven. They're gonna bake. I'm gonna let them cool slightly before I try them, but they already smell good. Once these were baked, I always just test them with a big skewer or a cake tester, make sure they come out mostly clean. You don't want any sticky residue really on it. And then I let them cool, and then we can now just enjoy them. So you can see they're all just like beautifully shaped. And yes, I picked the biggest one. Just like I go for the most streusel, I go for the biggest muffin there is. And look how perfect they are. Now we're just gonna break this open so we can look at the interior texture. That's what I love. You see pieces of date in there. Right there, you get the carrots that just kind of meld into it, and that deep dark color is gonna be so rich. I love the molasses notes. A piece of date. I love that sweet pocket, then a piece of date. What I like about it is, it's sweet obviously, but it's not too sweet. It's just sweet enough, because things like molasses or sorghum, they're sweet, but they're also cut with a little bit of that natural bitterness too. So it's really balanced, especially with the carrot. The carrot is gonna keep this super moist, which that's what I love. We have a super moist interior, which to me is one of the best things. So that means these can work really well. You can keep them in a container at room temperature for a few days, or pop the rest in a freezer. I love to utilize a freezer, pull them out when you want them. They're just like fresh. That's one of my favorite ways. These are great things for gifts, especially for these warm, cozy fall days that we're all going to be looking forward to eventually. It's inevitable, it's gonna come. So what I hope you do with this, I hope you share the video around so other people can be excited and maybe inspired also for fall with maybe some new baked goods, maybe something different. This can work, like I said, really for a breakfast, for maybe on the sweeter side, something when you want something special kind of, or as a great snack, or as a dessert. So share it around, check my website, wiseguy.com for this recipe and all my other recipes. And until then, enjoy something baked because you're gonna love it.